John Heyman saying Astros are trying to bring back Alex Bregman. They're still willing to do 150 million, 156 million for 6 years. But one reason he declined that earlier is it's a pay cut from the $28.5 million salary. Well, what does that have to do with Mr. Ryan Presley? Well, we've been getting a lot of reports as of late, coming out of Astroland, but this one is the most concrete report as of right now. The Cubs acquiring Ryan Presley. Now, I've been seeing some mixed answers out there on whether or not, this has to do with Alex Bregman. I see a lot of people out there saying, yeah, I don't think it really has much to do with Bregman. In my personal opinion, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I definitely am wrong a lot. That definitely happens. But, I'm thinking in my head, well, Presley, this guy was scheduled to make $14 million this coming year. And yes, the Astros, they are going to be paying a little bit of that cash. But the Cubs are going to be on the hook for $8.5 million. So I'm thinking in my head, how does it not help, when it comes to bringing back Bregman? Now, obviously, it's not going to be, the domino that falls, right? But every little bit can help. Because to me, Ryan Presley, I get it, right? They brought in Josh Hader last offseason, and that bumped Presley down to a setup role. But in my opinion, trading away a key guy like that, from the back end of your bullpen, it's just going to weaken your team. And I know the Astros, right? They could use some more prospects back in that system. They did get a pitching prospect back in Juan Bello. Now, they got some other arms there. I get it. But to me, I don't know, man. I just feel like Presley, with all the success he's had, both in the regular season and in the postseason for the Astros, man, it's kind of a guy where I'm not saying it's a salary dump by any means, but it's just a guy that, you'd like to have someone like Ryan Presley on your team. So, getting back to Alex Bregman, yeah, I think, yeah, you're saving $8.5 million. That can only help. And again, it's not going to be the big domino that's, going to say, oh, okay, Bregman, he's coming back to Houston, right? But, that $8 million, $8.5 million, you could put it towards Bregman and, whatever the contract ends up being there if they can get it done. Throw in whatever kind of deferrals or whatever else that you need to get that deal done. In the end, I do think, no, it's not going to be the big reason for Bregman to come back, but it can only help at the end of the day. Now, getting back to Bregman here, I feel like I've said the name Bregman, Alex Bregman, for, this is what I hate. This is the one thing I hate about offseason when these guys are hanging around on the board for so long. Of course, I forgot to mess up. I forgot to change the date. I hate when I do that, man. I always forget something. Hold on. We got to fix the date. Today's the 27th. I swear I get set up in advance and I still find a way to mess something up. But now we've had a lot of reports coming out with Bregman and the Astros in the last few days. We'll get to the other teams here in just a second, just to kind of recap everything. But the Astros, they had their fan fest this past week. The GM, Dana Brown, coming out and saying that they have had some positive talks, but still saying a signing is a long shot. I wonder, is that Dana Brown, trying to hold down some leverage at the end of the day? Because you're starting to think here at this point, right? We've heard all these teams, in the mix. The Red Sox, the Tigers, the Blue Jays, the Cubs, the Mets. But here he is still on the board, and the Astros still very well seem to be in the mix. And what Dana Brown said, the door is cracked open, right? So I'm starting to think here, when it comes to Bregman and the Astros, if they're still keeping the door open and no other team is really making that push, then at some point it feels like it's inevitable. However, we'll get to a bit of another story that maybe could counteract that. But then we even had Jose Altuve coming out recently and saying that, he will do whatever it takes to get Alex Bregman back in an Astros uniform, even if that means moving out to left field. A lot of people out there thinking, oh, Jose Altuve out in left field. Well, you got to remember it's second base. he hasn't really been all that great defensively at second base. So, I mean, is he really going to be that much worse out in left field? Still moves around a little bit. Got a pretty short left field out there with the boxes. Whatever. If he feels like he can do it, he's a veteran. He's one of the best veterans in the game. He's a pro's pro. If he feels like he can go out there and play some left field, then why not? Craig Biggio, we saw him move out years back to the outfield. Maybe Jose Altuve can follow that similar path. So the fact that you got Altuve coming out here and saying, hey, I'm willing to do what it takes. I want to win. We want to keep this guy around. Just kind of feels like there's a lot of good feelings going on here, right? There was even a picture today that surfaced. It's kind of hard to see, but you see possibly Jose Altuve maybe getting some reps out in left field. I don't know, maybe they were taking a look at it, seeing what they had, maybe. But either way, it still feels like, there's a lot going for the Astros at this point. However, there's also a little something that came out tonight. Chandler Rome saying the Astros continue to pursue Jorge Polanco as the Alex Bregman sweepstakes drag on. Well, if Jorge Polanco is on the Astros' radar, and if he ends up going to Houston, well, at that point, how do you fit Bregman into that mix? I don't know. Unless someone's got an idea, I remember someone a little while ago told me, no, they can put Bregman at third, Altuve is at second, you can put Paredes out in left field. I mean, sure. At the time, I was like thinking, no, there's no way they do that. And then we got the Altuve stuff, and it's like, okay, fine. But if you bring in Polanco, someone please give me an answer how you could still bring Bregman back at that point. I don't know. Is this leverage? Is this the Astros, combined with Dana Brown saying that, signing Bregman is still a long shot? I don't know. It sounds like to me the Astros, the door is cracked open line. The signing is still a long shot. Talking with Jorge Polanco. Sounds like the Astros are trying to play their own bit of hardball when it comes to Scott Boras, right? I'm going to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, we talked about Scott Boras to start things off. I don't know. At some point, man, do these players who, this is what I think of Scott Boras. I think Scott Boras, he is the best guy to have if you are one of the top players in the game, right? Whether that's a position player, pitcher, because so many times, right? We just saw it last offseason where these guys, they're trying to get some good deals, right? But then something happens, and then they end up hanging around on the market for a long time. And then they end up kind of, not getting, look, you go back to Pete Alonso, what was it, back in 2023, had a 7-year deal on the table over $150 million. And here's Pete Alonso throwing down his own 3-year deal with an opt-out on the table. It's like, listen, I think to me, and for me, I think when it comes to Boras, the Juan Sotos of the world, yeah, go get Scott Boras, man. Like, that's the guy you want, right? When you're a max money kind of a player, do it. But when you're kind of one of these, like, if you think of Juan Soto as a tier S and Bregman, Alonso, they're a tier below, great players, but not, like Juan Soto level. Are those the kind of players? Should these players be getting Boras, right? You look at Blake Snell, right? That did work out. Here's the thing with Snell, man. Luckily, he had the Dodgers, right? When you got the Dodgers on the table, right, when they're in the mix, you have a good chance at getting a good contract, no matter what your past has been, how spotty it's been when it comes to the injuries, the durability. Blake Snell just proved, right, that when you got the Dodgers in the mix, well, then good things can happen, right? But there was no qualifying offer attached, So that's an example of a guy where, maybe not Corbin Burns level, but a guy where you could still get something good if a team like the Dodgers are involved, right? I just think it feels like, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I have to go look back at this, but I feel like more often than not, a lot of these kind of high level kind of guys, but not tippy-top level, they seem to struggle, or at least Boras seems to struggle when it comes to getting these guys good deals. I don't know, man. I just wonder if we're going to start seeing some kind of a shift that's, more so than not. You saw Jordan Montgomery, right? He got rid of Scott Boras, right? And obviously ended up having a bad year, but you definitely saw how he felt about it. And yeah, again, he had the bad year, but, Jordan Montgomery was a guy going into last offseason. He was good. He just won a World Series, a guy that showed, you can get some innings a good amount of innings out of him, good quality innings. And he still, it took the 2-year deal with the D-backs, terrible first year. So I could totally understand the frustration from his part. That was a guy, though, you thought of him going into the offseason, probably a dude that gets at least a 4-year deal. I don't know. It's just interesting how all of these, these guys where you think they're going to end up getting solid deals and they're going to be good pickups for these teams. And, they're still just hanging out in the market. I don't know, man. You got to think, with Bregman, this is a guy where he's been a 4-win player, on average over the last few years. And Boras can't seem to get something done. Pete Alonso had a 7-year deal on the table at one point, trying to get something done. We'll talk about Alonso here in just a second, but, you got to think with Boras here, like it says right there on the screen, a lot of buffoonery going on, man. I'm getting tired of the whole Boras thing. Sure, the top players, right? The upper echelon, sure. That seems to always be, that seems to always work out. But for the Bregmans, the Alonsos, you kind of think, man, what's going on? So, kind of wrapping this up, for the Astros and Bregman, I'm not sure what's going on. It feels like to me there's some leverage being played here. The Astros, there seems to be a lot going for them at this point, but seems like they're trying to get the best possible deal. But what's Boras going to do? What's their side going to do? Well, we've seen a lot of other teams trying to get involved here, right? The Detroit Tigers at one point, they're my prediction for Bregman coming into the offseason. And the last thing we got back on January 21st was that the negotiations were at a standstill. Who knows what the offer is from Detroit? Is it a short-term deal, 3 years? Is it a little longer at 4 or 5? It's obviously not enough to get something done because from my point of view, who knows what the offers are, but sounds like it's not better than the Astros offer. And you also have to think from Detroit's point of view where the ballpark there, it's not going to be a great fit for Bregman. So I think maybe Detroit, they got to overpay a little bit, right, to try and, persuade him to go there. I know, you got AJ Hinch, but obviously something's happening there where they don't see whatever Boras is asking for Bregman, they don't see the same thing. Now, recently, we got here from Bruce Levine on 670 The Score. Bregman really wanted to come to New York or Chicago. The Cubs don't have the inclination to go 5 years. They love Alex Bregman, and they'd love to have him on a 1 to 3 year situation. Bregman is seen as a $25 million a year player at this point. Now, going back to the original John Heyman quote, says here, right, when we talked about the $28.5 million salary. Well, yeah, you're thinking from Bregman's point of view, his last contract with the Astros, it was backloaded. It was a $30.5 million salary total, $28.5 million base salary, and a $2 million signing bonus. So you're thinking probably from his point of view, well, he doesn't really want to go, who knows how far down or how far below that he wants to go. I don't know. To me, the only way he gets $30 million per year is if he takes a shorter deal. There's no way. I just don't see the Astros giving him that much on a 6-year deal. I'd be pretty shocked. I don't know. But he also mentions, right, the Cubs, Red Sox, Tigers. Also says here, there's said another team offering 6 years with the first year opt-out. My guess is the Blue Jays on that. if there's another team out there that, has been known to be aggressive this offseason, I mean, you got to think it's the Blue Jays, right? What other team is offering 6 years? Unless it's just some random team that we're not even thinking of, like the Nationals. I don't know. The Mariners. Don't see the Mariners doing that. So my thinking is the Blue Jays there. All right. Carlos Baerga, I know he's been very hit or miss, right? Take it with a grain of salt. He did mention on a podcast at one point the Blue Jays had a big offer out there for him, and he said no. So maybe it's the Blue Jays. We'll see. Now, we also had this from Ari Alexander. He put this at 2:18 this morning. Some details on the teams continuing to pursue him. The Mets are no longer involved, a source tells me. Tried to calculate how much luxury tax a Bregman contract would cost at his current offer versus a higher offer for the Astros. All right, whatever that means. But sounds like the Mets are no longer involved. So, in the end, I don't know. It's hard. It's really, to me, it feels like the Astros are going to be his landing spot based off of the recent developments that we've gotten. If you asked me this, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I'm thinking the Astros, they've already moved on. They brought in Christian Walker. They traded for Isaac Paredes in the Kyle Tucker deal. I'm thinking there's no way. But whatever, they're still here and they're willing to get something done. But again, you got to think about it from, Bregman's point of view. Who knows what he thinks? I don't want to put words in his mouth. But you got to think, all right, the Astros, they're still on? They're still in? All right. Okay, cool. Let's try and get something done. You got to remember with Texas, a tax-free state too. He's going to be making all that money, but still, that's where I get back to Scott Boras. It's like a great opportunity is on the table here. I mean, are you really going to get that much more out of some of these other teams? I mean, listen, let's say the Astros here, what was it, 6 years, 156? They trade away Presley. They throw that $8 million on top of it, that extra couple million per year. Or whatever the math is on that. You got to think if the Astros, they're going like 6 year, 165. I don't know, that's pretty good. But listen, I think it's going to come down to, is he willing to take the safe offer for 6 years, or is he going to be willing to bet on himself? Because it sounds like he's not going to be getting 6 years from any other team, unless I'm completely wrong. I don't know, because I feel like if a team out there had a 6-year offer on the table and more money, and the Astros aren't budging all that much, well, then I feel like he would have already went to that team. So I don't know, man. Yeah, that's going to be the biggest thing it comes down to. Is he going to want to take the safe offer, stay in Houston for the rest of his career, or take a shorter deal, all right, with an opt-out? Do the same thing that Chapman did. Maybe you can work out an extension with the new team. I don't know. Or, honestly, what about this scenario? What about, what if they come together? Let's say Bregman's not feeling whatever the 6-year offer is from the Astros at this point. Let's say they bump it up to 165, 170. Let's say Bregman still doesn't like that. Could he end up just doing a short-term deal with the Astros, with an opt-out, go back there, maybe try again, just like Chapman did, right? Maybe could that be a possibility? Maybe. Why not? Because at least he knows he's comfortable there. Obviously, he's a fan favorite. The ballpark suits him well. I wonder if that could end up happening. Just instead of this 6-year whatever money, just do a short deal and then try again later on. Then you could also see the risk in that too. What if he doesn't play well? What if the numbers continue to regress? I just wonder, if they could get creative, possibly. But then again, if the Astros, if they end up taking that offer off the table and then they go with a short-term deal, well, then that's going to open up the possibility for these other teams to get aggressive when it comes to those years. So, I don't know, man. This is a weird market. I feel like I'm kind of all over the place talking about it. I usually am all over the place when I talk anyway, but it just kind of feels very complicated, right? Astros, they're maybe budging a little, but they're not really willing to go that far. And it feels like these other teams, like the Red Sox, the Tigers, maybe even the Cubs, sounds like they're just kind of hanging by, and they're just looking to see if anything develops. But at some point, man, you got to figure something out. You got spring training right around the corner. All right, pitchers and catchers coming up soon. So let's see what ends up going on. Now, sticking with Scott Boras clients, well, we had this. Steve Cohen didn't sound very happy this past weekend at Amazing Day for the Mets, their own fan fest. Made some interesting comments. I thought these comments were very interesting, right? He was asked about, what the heck's going on with Alonso. This has been an exhausting conversation in negotiations. Juan Soto was tough. This is worse. A lot of it is, we've made a significant offer. I don't like the structures that are presented to us. I think it's highly asymmetric against us, and I feel strongly about it. Earlier this week, significant rumors surfaced connecting Alonso to the Blue Jays. The Angels and Giants are among a group of other teams that have either reportedly or speculatively been linked to Alonso, and of course the Mets. Cohen goes on to say, I will never say no. There's always the possibility. But the reality is we're moving forward, and we continue to bring in players. As we continue to bring in players, the reality is it becomes harder to fit Pete into what is a very expensive group of players that we already have. And that's where we are. Sounds like Cohen's getting, pretty close here to telling David Stearns, you know what, forget this. You know what, like, they're trying to bring him back. They're not doing it. And Boras, doesn't seem to be, he seems to be using these other teams for leverage as much as possible, right? We saw not too long ago that, here's another report from Pat Ragazzo. Pete Alonso met with the Angels yesterday. Still hearing nothing is close between the Blue Jays and Alonso as of this afternoon. We had Andy Martino not too long ago talking about the Blue Jays and Alonso. I'm hearing it. They're at the 10-yard line. I know from experience that those last 10 yards can have a lot of obstacles before you get into the end zone. I'm not sitting here saying he's going to become a Blue Jay, but that's what's going on with Pete today. That does kind of correspond to something I was told last week, saying that it was very close between the Blue Jays and Alonso. But that's where you're thinking, Blue Jays are thinking, all right, they got a deal done. They're feeling good about it. And then here comes, once again, Scott Boras going for the Mets, probably giving them a call saying, hey, this is what we got. What do you think? Right? And, fair game for the Mets, right? If they want to, try and make a counter. But it sounds like it's just constant back and forth. It's probably getting a bit exhausting from the Mets' point of view. They're trying to get their roster established, just like all these other teams. And it's like, come on. It's our homegrown guy here. We'd like to have him back, but you're making this difficult. So it sounds like he keeps leveraging the Blue Jays, the Angels. That's right. I get it. Scott Boras, he's an agent at the end of the day. His job is to get the most money possible for his clients. But it's like, come on, man. Comes a point where it's like, just get something done. It's like, I hate the dragging out. I can't stand it. Like, if that were me, man, it's like, I don't know I don't know. What do I know? But if I was ever, yeah, sure, I get it. Try and hold out for as much money as possible. But like, when you're doing it with the team that you've been with your entire career and your homegrown talent, a fan favorite, it's like, come on now. Like, at some point, this is a team that's been on your side here for your whole career. It's like, let's try and get something done. I'm wondering about Pete Alonso here. It's going to be interesting. I don't want to say the Mets are out, but the longer this goes on, the more I start to think that, is he going to be gone? I don't know. It sounds like the Mets, they're not really willing to budge much at this point. They could go with some internal guys. You can go with Vientos. You can give Beatty another chance. You got someone like Luis Angel Acuna that can move around. I think for the Mets, it's like, yes, they would love to have him back, obviously. But at some point, you got to kind of get your roster set. And if you're trying everything you can to, get something done, and it's still just nothing's budging, I don't know, man. I wouldn't be surprised here to see him end up, somewhere else like Toronto, maybe San Francisco, maybe the Angels, right? If you were to ask me between those three teams, I feel like how aggressive the Blue Jays have been this offseason, it feels like they're being used as the bridesmaid all offseason. They did get Santander. They got Hoffman. But, with how aggressive they've been, you start to think here, is Toronto going to be the best fit? Are they going to be the most logical landing spot? I don't know. The Angels, I think that could be interesting. You think of the Angels, right? I mean, like they're almost like they're like the Blue Jays of the West. They seem to be having a hard time trying to land some guys out there, even though they got Trout, obviously, because the Angels have stunk, right? That'd be pretty fun though, But then I also wonder with the Angels, Seanwell, does he move to left? Ward, what do you do with him? I don't know. I just think for the Blue Jays, they have a bit more of an easier time finding that fit, and with how aggressive they've been with the money, I kind of wonder if they're the team that's going to end up getting him. But then again, maybe there could be a breakthrough with the Mets. We'll just wait and see. Now, let's move on to the Padres. Let's move on to the Padres here. What the heck is going on here in San Diego? San Diego, man. You got to think here. It's tough, man, what's going on here. You're thinking at one point, they got a real shot at Roki Sasaki, man. You had pictures of Roki Sasaki in a Padres uniform, or Padres colors, I mean, right? A video they got leaked, and he's throwing in front of an entire brass of people, at Petco Park. And here come the Dodgers once again getting their man. And you also look at the ownership situation. What's going on there? Seems like to me, looking back, kind of reading on it, it seems to just be an inconvenience at the end of the day. But in the end, right, everything trickles from the top. And if there's no stability at the top and there's, some weird stuff going on there, well, then you got to think like, well, what's going on in, in this organization, right? There's been questions with the payroll over the last couple of years. And now the Padres are just in this weird situation where, I mean, they haven't gotten better. They've gotten worse. You lost Jerickson Profar. I was thinking, they would find a way to get him back. They couldn't bring him back. He goes to the Braves. I mean, you're not going to have Joe Musgrove for all of 2025. You don't have Roki Sasaki. You haven't gotten better. I mean, you haven't done anything. I mean, have they made one move? What was the move that they got? Ronnie Mauricio from the White Sox. They got Austin Davis on a minor league deal. Martin Maldonado. Wonderful. You got to think from the Padres' point of view here. I mean, sure, they could be competitive, right? But if you're looking at it, what's going to be the best option moving forward here for San Diego, for the Padres? Would it be better for you to try and bring back, capitalize on some value on some of these guys that are going to be going into free agency soon, like Dylan Cease? Michael King has come up now. Getting back to what we just showed you a second ago. The Padres have discussed Michael King in trade talks. Well, this is the one guy you're thinking, let's get this guy signed up to an extension. He was great for the Padres this past year. And now he's coming up in trade talks. I mean, what's going on here? Ken Rosenthal saying, one reason the open market remains clogged is that teams continue to discuss trades. Luis Castillo and the Mariners, Dylan Cease, Michael King, he brings up in the article. I mean, these guys are going to be making, right around $16 million combined? I mean, goodness gracious. We've seen reports already, not too long ago, the Twins are another team interested in Dylan Cease. They've also talked about Christian Vasquez. I wouldn't be surprised if Vasquez gets moved, but I don't know, it sounds weird. The Padres? That kind of makes me wonder if they're trying to come up with some big sort of a deal, I don't know. But you got to think from the Padres here, or the Padres' point of view here. You haven't gotten better. The Dodgers have just completely just set themselves apart. If they were already apart, and then they've done it even more. The separation has only increased between the two teams. Sure, could you run this roster back out and try again? But I mean, I don't know. I mean, sure, you can go for it again, but the way the Dodgers look, I know you got to play on the, winning is done on the field. It's not done in the front office. But if you're the Padres here and you're kind of looking at what's going on, even look at the Giants. Even the Giants have gotten better. They're going to be getting guys back like Young-Hoo Lee. It's only gotten more. The Diamondbacks bringing in Corbin Burns. I mean, the Padres here, sure, they do have a respectable team. I'll say even more than that. They have a good team. But if you're thinking about the long-term health of the franchise, questions with the payroll, would it be best right now to try and unload some of these guys and bring back as much value as you can? Maybe you take a bit of a step back, but if you can get back some good cost control talent, maybe the Padres could still stay competitive. I don't know, man. If you're taking a look at some guys here, I mean, listen. Here's the thing. Fernando Tatis Jr., you'd get a lot back for him. He's on a big contract, but he's still very young. When you think about the contract of Fernando Tatis Jr., this is a pretty affordable deal especially over the next 2 years. And then it bumps up to $25.7 million in 2027, 2028. Then it jumps all the way up to $36.7 million in 2029. Either way, this guy, if he stays on the field and he's productive for the next 4 years, that's a bargain, right? It's a big contract, but he's still very young. Do they move Fernando Tatis Jr.? It would take a lot. I wonder, probably, if you're thinking about it, he was a 3-win player this past year. 102 games, still good numbers. Hit 276, 340 on base, 492 slugging, a 135 WRC plus, right? A guy that obviously had the PED suspension. He's had injuries. I don't know. Would a team be willing to give up that much surplus for Fernando Tatis Jr.? This would definitely unload a lot of salary for the next several years, right? I feel like that's the guy, though, you would want to keep around from a business point of view. You want to put butts in the seats. That's your star player. You got Manny Machado, sure. You got Bogarts, but Fernando Tatis Jr., that's your star player. If I'm looking at guys, elsewhere, no, they're not going to trade Salas. They're not going to trade DeVries. Obviously, you're going to hang on to those guys. But Dylan Cease, I definitely think could be on the table. If they moved Michael King, you're definitely going to get back a good package, right? He is going to be a free agent after this coming year. But, these two are very good rentals that you're going to get back a lot of value. I wonder. You got some other guy, Luis Arise, I could definitely see getting moved. I just wonder what teams would be willing to get that aggressive because really, this past year, he kind of turned into a one-dimensional player, really just a singles guy. He can move around a little bit in the infield, but I could see him getting moved. Luis Campusano, his name has come up a little bit. I just wonder at this point, Dylan Cease, Michael King, I could see Cease getting moved. I could absolutely see Dylan Cease getting moved. Because there's no way he's not. There's no way he's signing an extension. And the Padres, with what's been going on there financially, they're probably not going to offer him an extension anyway. All right, hey, thank you, Cease, for the couple of years. Go have fun this offseason. Go find yourself a new team. All right. Michael King, though, he'll definitely be cheaper than Dylan Cease. So I wonder if maybe an extension could be worked out there. Is that report more so teams calling them? Or is it actually the Padres shopping Michael King? Maybe a little bit of both. Maybe. I could see, between the two, I definitely could see Cease getting moved. King? Maybe. Depending, again, they have good values. If you combine the median values here, you're looking at $60 million. That's a good haul of prospects right there. Now, if you were to try maybe, I don't know if you're going to be able to get rid of any of these contracts. Maybe Darvish. I think they're stuck with Bogarts. I think they're stuck with Machado. There's no way. Those contracts are so underwater That Bogarts deal is going to, listen, I love Bogarts. Will always love him. But my goodness, I still see Red Sox fans on Twitter saying, why do the Red Sox not bring him back? Because the Padres gave him, I'm sorry, I don't want to be harsh, but that was a terrible contract. I mean, listen, I love Bogarts, but the Red Sox absolutely should not have given him that deal. It was just ridiculous, right? I have a very hard time seeing them getting out of that contract. Machado, same thing. Maybe Darvish. Yeah, you'd have to eat some of it, but he's 38. I mean, if they eat a good amount, maybe, maybe Cronenworth. I could see something like that. That's, if you were to ask me the guys that are most likely, in my opinion, to get moved, I would say Cease. I would say King. I think you're going to see probably Luis Ariz. I don't know, maybe Campusano. The one thing about Campusano, still only 26 years old, hasn't fully figured it out, but he is a catcher, right? Catchers are scarce. He wouldn't cost a ton. So, yeah, the Padres, man, it's getting weird. I'm not sure what to think, what's going on here, but I'd be pretty surprised if this is the team on opening day. I feel like there's going to be some moves here. Not based off of anything I've heard, just kind of what I've seen in all the years that I've been paying attention to off-season baseball. Especially when you hear about all these money problems, ownership tussles, I don't know, man. And the fact that they need to get some more prospects back into that system, or if they wanted to get some young cost-controlled players, this would be the way to do it. All right? So, yeah. Cease, King. Cease, I think, is going to get moved. King, maybe. We'll see about that. Now, moving on. One more little thing to talk about. Let's end this on a fun note. We got MLB The Show. What's going on with MLB The Show? Well, we got this earlier today. Elly De La Cruz with a cowboy hat revealing on Instagram that he was going to be on the cover of MLB The Show. People are thinking, oh, man, all right, Elly De La Cruz. And then all of a sudden, Paul Skeens hops on board saying, hey, MLB The Show? And people are like, wait a minute, hold on a second. And then all of a sudden, Gunnar Henderson. It's like the Royal Rumble. You got the Royal Rumble coming up. Everyone's just throwing their hat into the Royal Rumble. And now everyone here, just like here, everyone's throwing their hat for MLB The Show. So what the heck's going to go on here? Are they going to be going on here? Are they going to have all three of these guys on the cover? Separate covers? I feel like in the past we've seen separate covers. That way it gives you your choice on who you would like to go out, what cover you would like to buy. I don't know. For me personally, I'm sorry. I'm going to offend some people here. I have never been able to get into MLB The Show. I've always been more of a franchise kind of a guy. MVP Baseball, I just thought that game was just night and day better than all of MLB The Shows. Sorry, I know I'm offending people there. What I liked about MVP Baseball was that it was fun to play if you wanted to play. But the franchise mode, it was just so smooth and you could simulate. It was great. Loved it. Best game of all time, in my opinion, man. Bring it back. Please bring it back. But I don't know. MLB The Show, I just haven't ever been able to get into it. I think the trade simulator on there, the trade machine is awful. It's so terrible. My goodness, it's so bad. Don't even get me started. Nope. And I don't know, man, like the way the off-season stuff goes, like it just gets confusing and clunky. I don't know. But MLB The Show, right? It is obviously the game that, most baseball fans are going to be playing. And, I think that's pretty cool. If they do all three of these guys on the same cover, maybe separate covers. I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening. But everyone, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to wrap it up there. Just a, quick show here for tonight. Did I just hit I think I hit the wrong button. There's the right button. I'm going to wrap it up here, everyone. I just wanted to come on, talk about what's going on here, the latest, talk about the rumors. We're still waiting on these guys to sign. Feel like it's, next couple of weeks, I feel like we'll see something. But Scott Boras, man, he's not making this easy. He's making this very frustrating. So But everyone, I'm going to wrap it up there. If you're kind of on the way out, hit that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new. Go check out the video that I just uploaded earlier. I do have something in the works for tomorrow. I got a few things in the works. I'm excited for it. Make sure you have the bell notification turned on, all the buttons turned on. Greatly appreciate that. But everyone, go have yourself a good rest of your night. Hit that like button on the way out for me. The goal tonight was 100. We are right there at 98. I think we can hit 100 by the time we're done in the next 5 seconds. Have yourself a great night, everybody, and I'll talk to you next time.